world, it's Keely and I'm back for another video. This video is actually a requested one and I said that I would do it, so I'm finally doing it. I'm so sorry for the delay. When I am learning about something, what I like to do, if it's not just a quick deep dive into Wikipedia or opening 15 tabs, is if it's a topic that I want to learn a decent amount about, I will create my own syllabus. And so the requested video was for me to talk about how I do that, because I've done that many times. When I am in formal school, I love having a syllabus, and right now I'm taking an online class through the local community college and there is no syllabus, and it is absolutely driving me crazy. I hate that. But the way, if you've never seen a syllabus before, it's basically just a document that the professor creates and then gives to all students. It has a bunch of different categories on it. It will have basic context for the class and an overview of what you might be learning. It will have listed out any required reading material. So if there's a textbook, that will be listed. And oftentimes it will say, the newest version came out in 2024, but it's totally fine if you get the 2022 or 2023 version to save some money. There will be supplemental readings that will also be listed on the syllabus. The class will be broken up into sections. Typically it's weekly, and within each week it will say, okay, this is what we'll be learning and these are the materials that you will be required to read or watch or whatever for that week. It will also have a breakdown of any assignments that are due throughout the course, or a section at the end that will be the full summary of all major assignments, with typically any specific requirements for it, as well as due dates and how many points they are worth, or what percentage of your grade will be attributed to this assignment. And then it will also have the teachers or the professors' office hours information and their contact information, and potentially some other stuff here and there. But it's basically to give students a guide to the course and also provide kind of a structured, but it can change throughout the course, a kind of structured way of looking at what the course will be over the length of time of the semester, or however long the course is going to last. It helps you to prepare, it helps the professor to stay on track, and it helps the students kind of conceptualize where they're going and things that they might need to consider week by week in order to do a potential final assignment. Not having that sucks when I'm trying to learn something, and I wish that they existed. I wish that you could just go to Google and type in this is something I want to learn about, can you give me a syllabus? And I wish that it would do that. That's probably a future AI thing. But for now, the way that I do it, because I just go into Notion, I make a page for whatever the topic is, and then I fill in things as I find them. I list out questions that I have, terminology that I find, names of experts in the field, and things like that. So I figured I would take you along as I'm going to make a syllabus to learn more about Shakespeare. This is something that I talked about in previous vlog, because I took a quick online Shakespeare course and I was reading a book that has to do with Shakespeare. But this is something I want to learn about this year, is learning more about Shakespeare's life and how to read his work and understand it. And that's just a topic that I figured, okay, I can easily put together a syllabus, and so I thought I would bring you guys along. So I wrote down some things for me to consider as I am making a syllabus. So I have just a blank Notion page that says, let's learn about Shakespeare at the top. And when I'm working through a syllabus, I try to figure out, is there a specific question that I'm trying to answer, or am I just trying to learn more about a general topic? And depending on which one I'm focusing on, that will determine the way that I do research and try to figure things out. Research in terms of just Googling and reading. I in general just kind of want to know more about Shakespeare, and then as I'm going, I'm hoping that I will gain the knowledge of how to actually read and understand his work. Next, I asked myself, like, are there things that I already know about this topic? And they could potentially be a jumping off point for me to then know what to look up next. Or do I know absolutely nothing and I'm starting from scratch? Do I already have books or sources in mind? And again, if yes, that helps because that's a jumping off point. If no, okay, I know that's something that I'm going to start looking into. And even if I have books in mind, I will continue to add to my list of books that I would like to read. The next thing that I consider is it a topic that there's potentially already sources out there for, like, learning about that topic? For Shakespeare, yes. There are tons and tons of online resources for it. So it's really just a matter of me finding ones that are free, easily accessible, and that I can like go back to at different points in order to learn more as I feel like it. And then I break down the syllabus kind of in different sections. So I will have a section for terminology or, words that are used when speaking and learning about Shakespeare that I want to define if I don't already know what they are. I will write down the names of any experts and kind of what their research was in, what is their focus area within that topic. I will also log any books that I know would be good resources to learn more. I will also look for potential journal articles, like what is the research showing? What are people talking about with this subject? And then I will also include any links that I find. So if I find, a really good resource, but I don't have time to read it right now, I will drop the link into my Notion page and go from there. As I'm starting out, I have 2 books on Shakespeare that I'm going to put on my Notion page and that will help me kind of figure out where to go next. So the first book I've already read, and that was this super short one, and this one was What Was Shakespeare Really Like by Stanley Wells. And just from reading this one, I know that Stanley is an expert or was an expert in Shakespeare. And so I know that anything that I can find for Stanley Wells specifically will be a good starting point since he is someone that has studied Shakespeare or that made it like his life's work to study and teach Shakespeare. What I also do when I have the physical book is I look at who is blurbing the book to see if there are potentially any other people then that I could look at. The blurbs on the back are from Stephen Fry, who I know is not an expert in Shakespeare, but has done a lot of theater, and so if he wrote about Shakespeare, I would read it. Kenneth Branagh, who also theater, so an like actor, producer. Then Harriet Walter, I don't know who that is, so I want to look that up. And then also Claire Tomlin, don't know who that is, so I want to look those 2 people up. So what I'm going to do right now is just make my categories. So we make a category that says books, we make a category that says links, we have one that are people or experts, and then I'll make one that says terminology. All right, so people or experts, I will go ahead and put down the names Harriet Walter and Claire Tomlin. And for books, I will go ahead. And now for when I'm putting down sections, sometimes I will make it into like a table, and then this way I can have categories within the table and mark things as read or not read. I don't have the energy to do all that today. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm just going to list out the books and then anything that I know about them or any questions that I have as a result of that book. So the first book is going to be this little one, which is What Was Shakespeare Really Like by Stanley Wells. And then underneath that, I'll put Stanley Wells was an expert in Shakespeare. So I'm going to add Stanley to my list of people and experts. I'm going to mark this one as read, that I've read that book. And then the second book that I have, I watched a booktube video from the Book Bully, and she mentioned that one of her favorite books when she read it was A Year in the Life of William Shakespeare, 1599 by James Shapiro. I know that this is a really good one. People really enjoy learning about Shakespeare. And so, okay, I'm going to add this one to my list. So, A Year in the Life of William Shakespeare, 1599 by James Shapiro. And then as I have this book, I haven't read it yet, but let's see who's on the back. Peter Kemp, Robert McCrum, Jonathan Bate, and Nicholas Hittner. All of those people are from like newspapers because it has next to their names where they come from. So Sunday Times, Observer, Sunday Telegraph, and Guardian. I know that those are papers, and so I don't necessarily want to look into their work because that's not the perspective that they're writing from necessarily. Like they were just reviewing this for a book review section of a newspaper. But on the inside, there are also some other ones. So Andrew Motion, who is Poet Laureate of England, Ian McKellen, actor who has done a crap ton of theater. And then it says, okay, Jacques Barzoon, author of From Dawn to Decadence. What I will do then is look up who Jacques Barzoon is and what that book, Dawn to Decadence, like why did they highlight the name of the book? Sometimes they will do that because that will be another resource to look at. It could also just be that author just put out a book with the same publisher, but we'll find out. So let me put this name, Jacques Barzoon. From Dawn to Decadence. Okay, so we have that one. And then just looking through the book, okay, there's some more at the front. Fintan O'Toole from the Irish Times, Jeremy Treglown from the Financial Times, Sam Leith from Spectator, and Francis Wilson from Saturday Telegraph. None of those, again, are ones that I'm necessarily going to be looking for or looking at because they are potentially, I don't want to say just journalists and diminish their work, but they're not experts in Shakespeare, presumably. Now, if you have a physical book, what you can also do is look at the back of the book for any additional information. So does the author have their list of citations or resources? Like where did they get their information from? So that's what I'm looking for in this. So there's a biographical, here we go. There's a biographical essay, and at the bottom it says principal sources. That's where this author got his work from. So here's a bunch of stuff that I could potentially look at. Now, because it's Shakespeare, again, there's going to be a plethora of information out there. And so what I'm really going to do is just do a basic search for jumping off points. And for me, that's going to be courses or YouTube videos that kind of summarize concepts, and then also some maybe some other books that I can then look to learn more about Shakespeare's life. We have, so far, we're working on it. We have just basic information. For the terminology section, it can be very basic terms that you want to make sure that you understand when you're looking into a topic. It can be concepts that people tend to use. It can be theories. It can be whatever you're finding that people tend to use. So one of the terms, or two of the terms that I want to make sure that I fully understand are tragedy and comedy in the terms of playwriting and Shakespeare, because he wrote tragedies and he wrote comedies, but I don't entirely know how you tell the difference. Is it as basic as the comedies were funny and the tragedies had something bad that happened? Or did the comedies have bad things that happened and the tragedies also had humor in them? So I want to make sure that that is something that I'm understanding. So I'll just flag that for right now. For these people, since I have a couple names here, let's see if I can, knock them out. Harriet Walter. You're wanting to look into potential people. You also want to give context to your Google search or your whatever search engine, because there will be a lot of people that have probably the same name or similar name, and you want to make sure that you're narrowing it down. So I wrote Harriet Walter, and then I'm just going to put Shakespeare and see what comes up. Harriet Walter is an English actress. Okay. Oh, here's a link to a book she wrote. This one is called She Speaks What Shakespeare's Women Might Have Said. It says, Harriet Walter, one of Britain's most esteemed Shakespearean actors, has played most of Shakespeare's women. She Speaks is her inventive reimagining of what these women might have said. So this is like a feminist retelling of Shakespeare's work. That's pretty interesting. I'm going to flag this one. So I'm going to go to her and I'll put, let's see, what do I want to put? Let's put well-known Shakespearean actor who wrote a feminist retelling of what the women in Shakespeare's plays may have said. And the title of that book is She Speaks What Shakespeare's Women Might Have Said. Cool. All right, now we know about her. Okay. Next person is Claire Tomalin. So let's do this again. Claire Tomalin, Shakespeare. And we get, okay, Claire Tomalin, English journalist and biographer known for her biographies of Charles Dickens, Thomas Hardy, Samuel Pepys, Jane Austen, and Mary Wollstonecraft. Okay, well, Mary Wollstonecraft is one of my favorite people to read about because her daughter was Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein, my favorite book of all time. This is just good for me to learn about Claire Tomalin regardless. So let's go to her Wikipedia page and see if it links to the books. She has published, The Life and Death of Mary Wollstonecraft, edited and introduced Mary Shelley's stories for children, H.G. Wells, Jane Austen. Okay, so she's written biographies. That's the context that she's coming into this. That's why she reviewed this book, because she writes biography. I'm going to put a note here, not an expert in Shakespeare, but has written well-known biographies. And then I'm going to put a little note, including one of Mary Wollstonecraft. So look that up. Now let's go into Stanley Wells. I imagine that since he spent like 80 years of his life studying Shakespeare, there's going to be a lot. So we'll do Stanley Wells, Shakespeare. Stanley Wells, English Shakespearean scholar, writer, professor, and editor who has been honorary president of the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust, professor at Birmingham University, and author of many books about Shakespeare. Okay. Awesome. There's a link here called No Sweat Shakespeare. That sounds wonderful. So let's go ahead and flag this website as something that I want to look through. So we're going to go to the main website, which is Welcome to the Home of Modern Shakespeare Resources. Our mission is to help everyone understand Shakespeare's language. Awesome. Okay, this is going to be a perfect resource for me. So No Sweat Shakespeare. I'm going to put this in the links section, and then I'm going to go back to the page on Stanley Wells. So I just read through a little bit of what it says about Stanley Wells, and they talk about how he wrote a lot about the life of Shakespeare in particular. What I want to do is go back to my Google search, and it gives me the link to the What Was Shakespeare Really Like book. But I also want to see what are the names of the other books that Stanley Wells has written. Here's a list of his major publications. We have Re-Editing Shakespeare for the Modern Reader from 1984. Okay, I'm going to open that one up in a new tab. Then we have the Oxford Dictionary of Shakespeare, Shakespeare in the Theatre, an Anthology of Criticism, Shakespeare the Poet and His Plays, the Oxford Shakespeare King Lear, Shakespeare for All Time, Shakespeare & Co., Shakespeare Beyond Doubt. I don't know that necessarily any of those books are where I want to start, but that's good. We will go back to my Notion, and I'll just put expert in the life of Shakespeare, who wrote many books on the topic. And let's look at this Re-Editing Shakespeare for the Modern Reader. What does this look like? This is lectures given at the Folger Shakespeare Library. It looks like it's out of print, but it might have, there might be a digital version of it. Okay. 4 chapters of this book are concerned with the presentation as well as the establishing of Shakespeare's text. The first 2 look at verbal details, the second 2 at matters of staging. All right, this sounds very similar to the book that I already read. And the problem that I run into when I find someone who is an expert is that they don't write about their journey learning. They write about the expert stage. A lot of times the perspective that they're writing from is from someone that knows a lot, which duh, they're an expert, but I don't know a lot. I'm getting started. I want to flag him as someone to look into later on, but I think he might be a little bit beyond my learning abilities at this time. Okay, now the final name that I have is Jacques Barzun from Dawn to Decadence. So let's go ahead and we're just going to put this right into Google and see what it tells me about this book. From Dawn to Decadence, 500 Years of Western Cultural Life is a book written by Jacques Barzun. It's a large-scale survey history of trends in history, politics, culture, and ideas in Western civilization from approximately the beginning of the 16th century to the end of the 20th century. Okay, massive cultural work. Not interested in reading that entire thing, but I understand now why he reviewed this book about Shakespeare, because this is a book about a huge cultural moment in the 1500s, which was the 16th century, which falls under the topic that this expert or author has written about. All right, awesome. So that is a 900-page book, by the way. That's a massive undertaking and not one that I'm really willing to look into. So we're going to wrote a cultural history of, how many years was it? 500 years of Western civilization, starting with the 16th century. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to take this dude's information on my list and I'm going to italicize it, and then that flags to me that like I'm gonna skip that one. So now I have kind of these basic things. I looked up stuff from the beginning, so now what I'm gonna do is look for books. So I'm literally just going to search like best books about Shakespeare, best books to learn about Shakespeare. Let's do it that way. Yeah, it's once again giving me plays written by him, and that is not what I want. All right, so instead what I'm going to do, because that's not working. Now I'm going to change my search. Resources to learn about Shakespeare. Let's try that instead. Okay, first link, myshakespeare.com. Learn to love it. We're teachers like you, completely free for the 2024-2025 school year. Full text edition of his plays. Annotation tools and questions, engage students as they read. There's quizzes. Okay, so this is like an online learning platform in order to learn more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flag this and I'm going to add it to my links section, and then I'm going to put a note. Nope, that's not what I wanted to do. I'm going to put a note with it saying online learning resource, quizzes, courses, etc. And then I'm going to go back to the search. Now here's a huge link that's 96 incredibly useful links for teaching and studying Shakespeare. That sounds overwhelming, so I'm going to keep going. Here we go, the Folger Shakespeare Library free teaching resources. One thing that I've done over the years is I also look for resources for people teaching that topic. So what is the professor using in order to teach about this topic? This is a huge resource that professors, teachers can enjoy. It says become a teacher member, explore this free selection of teaching resources, and then it has them flagged as free. Shakespeare Sonnet 138, a close reading module, comparing Shakespeare to his source of Holinshed, the witches in Macbeth. Okay, so this looks like it's going to be a cool resource for as I'm, potentially finding a specific thing within Shakespeare's work I want to learn about. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to my links section. And then I'm going to go back. We get No Sweat Shakespeare again, which is good. Here's one. Shakespeare or Royal Shakespeare Company, Shakespeare Learning Zone. You can just play, I guess, links to, is this like the full play? If you click on it, all the information you need about the play is divided into 4 sections: story, characters, language, and staging. Each section has 3 different levels of information. Choose which is right for you. Level 1, new to the play. Level 2, more detailed information. Level 3, in-depth study and analysis. Awesome. Okay, this is exactly what I want for when I actually start trying to read his plays. I'm going to add this and put a little flag with it that says great resource for reading his plays and understanding them. But this is basically what I do as I'm learning. Now, the final thing that I will do is I'll go back to just the main Google page and I will look up online course about Shakespeare. Okay, so the first thing that comes up is Oxford University Department for Continuing Education. This course focuses on 5 Shakespeare plays covering a range of genres, but it looks like you have to apply in order to do this course. Okay, that's not what we want. We want just a free study guide. Okay, here's a Reddit thread under the Reddit, the subreddit for Shakespeare. So it says, recommendations for online Shakespeare courses, especially based on movie and theater productions. My friend and I are looking to do some online Shakespeare courses for personal interest, not academic credit. And they're just asking. Here's another thing. If you find forums where people talk about it, you'll also get like great resources. Reddit is a good place to start. But you also want to take everything with a grain of salt. And it's the more like educational subreddits, people tend to be a little bit nicer, and they might actually say like, this person has done this research, but it's being contested or it's being questioned, or this person established the way that we think about this thing. And then that's a jumping off point. Okay, now you have a name, now you can move forward. A lot of times people will include links. They have a crap ton of links, and so I'm just going to copy this link to the subreddit and dump it into my links page as a resource. Another thing that you can do is, if you have a specific topic, go to Reddit, and if you can't find a subreddit for that specific topic, look into the subreddit for like the overall field of study. Because there's Shakespeare, he has his own subreddit, of course, but I would also potentially look at subreddits on literature, English literature, if there's a theater one, if there is I know there's a couple for history, so I would look through history ones and just do keyword searches for different threads where people have posted and asked questions. That's the way that I do syllabus building, and then I will flip my camera around in a second to show you what it ends up looking like. But this is kind of like the basic overview of how I start to pull together a syllabus. And then as I am moving my way through these different resources, I just continue to add to it, and I continue to add more pages to my Notion page of like subtopics and other things. And eventually I'll get to a point where I'm like, okay, this is cool, and then I'll move on to the next thing. But this is really where I catalog everything that I'm finding out, and all of the potential places that I want to go next. I will also use this as a log as I am working my way through this book, and I will tab stuff in the book and write down things that I want to follow up on. You know, I might find out that this author uses some phrases repeatedly, and I'm like, what the hell does that mean? And so I'll flag that. Or I might find, you know, there might be a source for something that I'm like, okay, I don't know what that is, so I want to look into that. And then you just continue along with this process until you have like a good info dump section of your Notion or a Word document, Google Docs, whatever you're using, that you can go back to as a resource for you, so that you have like the best avenue for learning about those things. I will flip around my thing right now and show you guys. Okay, so here's what my Notion page ended up looking like. So as you can see, I just put it at the top, let's learn about Shakespeare. I have it broken up into books, and you can see I literally was just typing stuff out. Here's the links with any of the little notes that I had, people and experts. So this is where I'll start putting names of people that I want to keep following, and then terminology. So as I learn new things, have new topics, stuff like that, I will just dump it in there. So it's pretty simple, but this is kind of what it just starts looking like. And let me show you from last year what it looked like when I was actually researching programs. You can see I have, you know, learning history, learning English lit. Like as I type through, you can see I was watching a lot of Ruby Granger videos when I was learning about English lit. So these are all books that she mentioned. And then at one point she actually talked about some of her coursework. So I literally just like paused her videos and typed out what it said in her syllabus that she was using, additional readings, questions, and terminology. So that's something that I didn't mention. If there's someone that you watch that they're already studying this topic, I take notes on what I'm watching, on things that they mention. That's another resource. Okay, so let's go to... yeah, when I was looking for East Asian Studies programs, so I actually like built it out a little bit more. So I have flagged the Asian Studies programs. So you can see here's one from Harvard, here's some from Princeton, Penn State, and then I have the different sections that you could, it had a dual title PhD, so I had all the different fields, stuff like that. This was all suggested information that came out of the Rutgers program, academic reading list, anywhere that I could find. So that would be something that I would potentially Google, is like academic reading list for Shakespeare studies, and then I'd post a link. Supplemental materials and reading, so this is any associations or groups that are focused on that. And then here's some questions that I had at the time that I was trying to learn more about, some conferences that are focused on that thing, reading lists. So there's a couple of the programs had application reading lists that they would recommend. I linked those. And then online learning, so there were some China X, there's a book club course, and then China's past, present, and future. So this was what I was working on back then, and if I want to go back to studying that stuff, I will. Like, this is just a good way for me to go back to it. So you can see here's the one that I'm using for my current online course. Yeah, this is just where I keep all of my like learning stuff. Let me know if you have any questions, if you want to know anything more about how I do this, or if you need help getting started, definitely let me know. Thank you to the person that asked for me to make a video about how I do this. I'm so sorry that it took me so long to do, but this is what I did last year when I was also looking into different topics. The only difference between then and now is that last year I was actually looking into programs to apply to for grad school. So I had a whole section on my Notion page of the links to those programs, the information about those programs, dates that you had to apply, requirements for applying, reading lists, those kinds of things. So I don't necessarily have that for this because this is just for fun, but that would be something that I would be adding into this list if I wanted to study this in a more formal setting. But thank you so much for hanging out. And again, let me know if you have any questions, and that's it. Thanks for watching. Bye.